Hi friends, and welcome to the 1970s. I'm going to show you a few 1970s pieces going from the beginning of the decade to end of decade over on my other side. In the 1970s, we're going to see a wide range of styles and different kinds of styles that were in vogue at the same time. The 1970s is what we typically think of as being the beginning of postmodern fashion. Postmodern fashion, if we simplify it down to the easiest answer, is using a variety of different aesthetic influences, and you have multiple things that can be in style at any one time. And this, along with serious reuse of past styles, which is another characteristic of postmodern fashion, are things that we start to see really gaining traction in the 70s. So I want to start over here. The 70s is really well known for psychedelic prints. This one, I believe, was a bridesmaid's dress. It was given to me by my friend Joy Campbell. And this one is just really fun. We see kind of this continuation of these crazy prints, crazy colors, and the maxi style dress that was introduced in the latter part of the 60s. This one's got some kind of a machine version imitation of smocking on the bodice. More often, smocking is done by hand. You'll often see it on children's clothing now, but this is an imitation of it from the 70s. We've got this flutter sleeve, and if you remember, where have we seen this flutter sleeve before? Right, it came straight out of the 1930s. So we see a lot of 1930s influence in the 1970s. We'll see a little bit of 40s influence as well, but you can definitely see the 30s in the skirt length and in this flutter sleeve here. And so that's something we're going to see quite a bit. This print is pretty typical of the 70s, that part of the 70s anyway. We've kind of got these wild colors, bold florals. That's something that you see a lot. Looking at construction, this dress actually does have a metal zipper. I believe that this one was most likely homemade. We've still got this hook at the waist. Whoever sewed this knew exactly what she was doing. This one has a lining. The outer fabric feels like a polyester cotton blend. Not super comfortable to wear, not horrible, but it doesn't wrinkle. You can see I'm grabbing it in my hand, crushing it. It recovers beautifully. But we've got a sheer poly cotton blend, and then underneath we've got a lining. This one feels like it's either polyester or acetate. I'm going to guess, based on the way it crinkled up when I washed it, we're probably looking at acetate here. The other thing that I'm noticing, this one may not be handmade after all. This has a narrow hem that is done with a sort of a chain stitch. It's hard to see because they have used transparent thread, monofilament, that is really similar to fishing line to hem this invisibly. So next, we're going to move into some of what most people think of when they think of the 70s, and that is polyester double knit. Polyester double knit is a hallmark of the 1970s. We don't really see it too much before or after, so this is something that is really special. Really uncomfortable to wear. It does not breathe at all. But this is something that you'll see a lot in the 70s. All three of these garments are polyester double knit. Now, although pants, we've seen pants for women for quite some time, the 1970s is when pants for women became really common. You'll notice these are the first two pant suits that we have seen. This one's got a really typical 70s silhouette. Honestly, I would consider wearing this myself if it weren't made of polyester double knit. You've got the matching pants and top. The top buttons down the front. It's got a little snap right here, fastening it there. They've used two complementary double knits, one with a very 70s cartoony looking floral pattern, very stylized. And you'll notice that the pants are a little more narrow through the knee and flared at the bottom. We really start to see a lot of bell-bottom pants, flared pants in the 1970s. This V neckline kind of halter top sort of look, although this isn't strictly a halter, you see a lot of this in patterns, sewing patterns and clothing geared towards younger people in the 70s. Next, we have a truly fantastic double knit polyester suit. This is courtesy of a thrift store in my hometown, and it is iconic 1970s. Some of the identifying features: first, polyester double knit, which we've already talked about. Next, you'll notice this has a huge collar. Does this look familiar? Right, huge collars from the 30s and 40s come back in the 70s. This is a very unstructured jacket. You can see if we open it, it's unlined. Very meant to be kind of relaxed and comfortable. The pants have an elastic waist, no fly. So this is a very unstructured kind of jacket. The men's version of this particular kind of suit was called a leisure suit, and they were often made in wacky colors. I've seen several blue ones. That seems to have been a really popular color, but they came in a rainbow of hues and are a feature peculiar to the 1970s. This one is a dress I found at Goodwill. Again, you'll notice this almost looks like the exact same color as what we have on the suit. This is also polyester double knit. We've got this V neckline. Necklines have dropped just a little in the 70s. We've got some things that are a little more daring. This one had a belt at one point. We've got some belt carriers here. And we have a wrap skirt, which is actually sewn into the waistband, so kind of a faux wrap, but heaven help you if a gust of wind catches it. We've got some embroidery here and some very bold striping, also in polyester, accented with grosgrain ribbon. This embroidery is done in a very simple chain stitch. I would say most likely machine done. It has a zipper in the back. The collar actually fastens over the zipper. It's got some hooks and eyes. Looks a little awkward. We opted not to fasten that. And you'll notice a change from earlier zippers in that we've got a nylon zipper here, which we first started seeing in the 60s and carried over into the 70s. This particular piece is from Dallas. It is Herman Marcus Dallas, a very, very 1970s piece that I found here in Atlanta. All right, so moving on to a different version of the 70s, we've seen some 30s, 40s influence. It's kind of all over the place. Next, we're going to see one of the most iconic designers of the 70s for the general public, and that is Jessica McClintock for Gunne Sax. These dresses right here are all really good examples of Jessica McClintock's Gunne Sax line. Gunne Sax was geared towards juniors. It was not really size inclusive. The patterns, she produced a line of patterns for simplicity as well. The patterns only went up to a 36-inch bust, I think was the highest on any of them. So a few of these are authentic Gunne Sax, and a couple, this one is either homemade or a knockoff, but still, as you can see, has the general aesthetic. So how do you identify a Gunne Sax? First of all, a lot of her dresses used this really iconic calico combined with ribbon and lace. So that's one thing to look for in a Gunne Sax style dress. Others relied more on solids, typically a pretty gauzy kind of fabric, which you can see here. My mom had several Gunne Sax dresses that she wore when she was in high school, and this was in the late 70s. So this one is an authentic Gunne Sax. I picked it up in Iowa. We've got this maxi length here. Even some of these dresses with sleeves were sometimes worn as more formal dresses, which is probably what this one was. It's had elastic at the neckline, which has sadly departed this life. We're seeing a lot of insertion, is what you call this kind of lace that has straight edges on both sides. You'll often see that in the sleeve, combined with some ribbon and some lace on either side. Again, very, very typical of what you'll see with Gunne Sax. Another common feature of Gunne Sax dresses is that they often had a tie, a sash in the back. Next, let's look at one of the calico ones. This one is a Gunne Sax label, and it's been worn quite a lot. You can see it's got a little bit of fade. Somebody really loved this dress. We've got buttons down the front. So Gunne Sax relied a lot on, can you guess which period? A lot of these are loosely taken from the late 19th century and the early 20th century. There's a lot of Edwardian influence. I've got a couple of Gunne Sax blouses. They've got the high collar with a lot of lace, just like we saw in the Edwardian period, but updated for the latter part of the 20th century. So this Gunne Sax, again, we've got the juxtaposition of satin ribbon that picks up a color from this calico. It's repeated down here. You'll usually see a ruffle down here at the bottom of the dress, which we've got on all four of these actually. This one's got long sleeves, center back zipper, and this one has ribbon on the sides to help provide a little bit of shaping and waist accent. You'll also see, because Gunne Sax was popular in the latter part of the 70s and we're kind of starting to see a precursor to the 80s, we usually see a little bit of a sleeve puff going on here. Our last Gunne Sax we're going to look at right now, this one is a homemade Gunne Sax made from a Simplicity pattern. This was a gift from my friend Candace Owen, who made it for herself when she was younger. It has pockets. I love it. We've got some really pretty little decorative buttons that she picked out. Got just a little bit of sparkle to them. This is made of cotton, and the vest is quilted. This would have been worn with a blouse under it, a Gunne Sax blouse, of course. And we've got some really nice detailing here. She's got some vertical machine quilted lines here, and a sort of a facing here along the front, providing a little bit of detail on the curve. You'll see the same ribbon used top and bottom. And she used, it's hard to see, but she used a couple of coordinating prints here rather than just one. Let me pull the skirt up so you can get a better look. For the main body of this, she used the one that was solid brown with a few flowers spaced about 1 inch apart. But on the ruffle, on the pockets, on this trim, and on the trim running down the front, she used one that was a little bit more densely populated with flowers that was created in a coordinating print. Coordinating calicos were really popular in the later part of the 70s, and so these were used both on manufactured ready-to-wear Gunne Sax dresses, and we also see them on the homemade versions. My mother had one that was all brown. I'm not sure where it is. My mother had one that was all brown with a fall leaf design, and I think it had about 3 different prints that were all together on it. The 70s were full of a few different styles that seem a little contradictory. So we've got the maxi dress. We also have the mini dress. This is an example of one. We've got this cute little puffed sleeve. Again, kind of a carryover from the 1940s. Really, this whole silhouette wouldn't be too out of place for the 40s except for the short skirt. This one is a polyester single knit, not a double knit, so it's a little thinner than the others. Found this one at the Salvation Army. Again, we've got maybe a little more daring neckline than you would have seen in the 40s, but still kind of a similar sort of a shape with the sleeve going on here. This one has a center back zipper. The dress appears to have shrunk a little and the zipper did not, but we've got a center back nylon zipper. So you can see some of the huge diversity of style that is really characteristic of the 70s.